Hello, and welcome to the first OPFS podcast, which features Karen Adams MSP for Banffshire and Buchan Coast. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Karen, and your experience of being a single parent?
Yes, absolutely. So I was a single parent to 6 children of various ages. My marriage broke up. It ended and I found myself on my own with 5 children still at home. One had left home at that point. She was of that age. She's now married with 2 children. But I was still at home with 5 sons, which it was quite a bit of a shock, really, at that time, and quite hard to see what was in my future. And it's quite a scary time as well to be left with all that responsibility on my own. Everything from finances to juggling homework to, all the everyday physical aspects of looking after 5 children, but also the mental load. So I've been looking after those 5 boys on my own since 2013. Yeah. So, of course, that's 7 years now. Yeah.
What was or is the most positive aspect of being a single parent for you?
I think a really positive aspect for me was being able to, well, at that time, always think, what's a silver lining that's came from this? And it was reevaluating my life and what I could bring to the table, not just, as a person on my own in regards to parenting, but also me as a person. What am I going to do now for work, for a job, for any sort of career? So I suppose a silver lining there was that I was able to reassess my own life as an individual and not, part of a couple. Because I knew at that point, I was so very grateful for the welfare system because I wasn't working. I did a lot of volunteer work and some charity work. I've never done paid work. Any type of career. I had done odd jobs in the past, and over the years to get some extra money in, but I'd never had that real focus on what I actually wanted to do there, and I needed some steady stream of income. So a silver lining from that was I got quite active in politics, and I also signed up to do a politics, economics and philosophy degree with the Open University. So it kind of set me on a footing of a bit of purpose for me as an individual.
Do you feel that there's still a stigma against single parents? And if so, how can we challenge these unfair criticisms against them?
I think there is. And I'll tell you why I think there is. It's because when I automatically became a single parent, I didn't tell people straight away. It took a while for me to admit that my marriage had broken down and I was on my own with the children. And when I became, an activist and I was out seeing a lot more people, it was something that I kept quite guarded, because I felt that if I said, I'm a single parent of 6, that I felt there'd be immediate judgments made against me. So although it's perhaps something that's not immediately in your face, it's still there, there's still stigma there. You see it in media and on TV programs all the time. And I think that really does need to change, because there's this, I remember actually I was in a meeting, and I won't give anything away so people can identify this person or the meeting, but somebody was complaining that there might be, well, what if we have a single parent with 6 children move into the neighbourhood? So I turned around in the meeting, I was an elected councillor at that time, and I said, I'm a single parent with 6 children. And then they said, no, not a single parent like you. I thought, no, well, what do you mean then, if not like me? Because that's who we are. That's who single parents are. So I know that there is still that discrimination and judgment towards single parents. But I think a lot of the time it is few and far between, and it's really important to educate people that single parents work extremely hard, because you're doing, double the job. And it is exhausting, but you're not just doing double the job at home, you're having to do that job out the home, in the home, and there's not a lot of sleep or rest time that comes in there. So it's really trying to change the idea of what a single parent is, and remove that stigma, because single parents are extremely hard working in terms of the mental load in itself that it puts upon a person.
Was being a single parent a motivating factor in becoming an MSP?
That kind of came afterwards. I was caught up in the situation of, a marriage breakdown. It's it's a difficult thing within itself, and navigating that and everything, that comes with that, but also navigating life, as a single person as well at that time, and juggling, time management was extremely important, and to be extremely organized with my time and prioritizing things too. That was quite difficult. As time went on, when I was studying politics as well, and I was there, feminism was part of that, and realizing that we have all different genders within the single parent family and community, but reading about how it disproportionately affects women, and that it brought that feminism aspect into it when I was studying politics, and it really highlighted that to me, that the imbalance of care, unpaid care, and all these things were what I was experiencing was quite a political thing as well. So that was something that I was able to bring forward at meetings, not just focusing on one aspect of politics I was really interested in, but bringing my lived experience into it as well, because it really wasn't easy finding, that time management. My children, when they were younger, I used to be able to take them when I was getting them ready for school, because I was a stay-at-home mother for most of that time. I could fit in the charity and volunteer work. And I was also an interpreter for my dad, looking after him because he's deaf. So I had commitments and appointments to attend with him as well. So it was just trying to organize all this together with in this unpaid role, was quite difficult to navigate. But in the beginning, my children, they would always have ironed school uniforms, every morning, and breakfast on the table, and dinner was freshly cooked and made, at dinner time. And it kind of went from that to grabbing items of clothing out of washing baskets, quickly to put them on there, to get them dressed for school in the morning, because I had all these other commitments now that I couldn't pass off to somebody else in the home. So, my life did change in that regard, but I also realized that it wasn't that important that they had these fully ironed clothes to get to school in the morning. And it really did reassess those priorities for me, and to see what was important. And it was more important for them and my children to see somebody that was being able to manage the home, and somebody that was taking charge, of their life and having an interest. And it's actually benefited us, really. My children are, they're very independent. They've learned how to cook because they've had to cook, because they got sick of chicken nuggets and chips, or a chipper being brought in last minute and put on the table, because I hadn't been doing that cooking that I had plenty of time for, in the past. So they've had to develop and change as well, and take on more responsibility. So although it's been very hard noting all these changes within our family, it's also been quite positive in many aspects.
Did your children take inspiration from seeing how you were handling the situation?
I think so. And my oldest son, who's, the oldest child in the house at that time, I have my daughter as well, and she was very supportive, and, she's been fantastic as well. But within the home, so he will be cooking meals, for his younger brothers, helping care for his brother, because I have children who are neurodiverse and have additional support needs. So he's actually a carer for his younger sibling, to allow me to do, other things so I can support the home. And it's not a traditional family setup as people would see it. He calls himself a stay-at-home brother, because he does a lot of the childcare. He washes the school uniforms now, he makes the meals. And actually, if I'm tired, he's a very loving boy. He will make me a home cooked meal and bring it to me He won't even call me to the table, whereas everybody else gets called to the table. So I can't say, this is because it's a single parent family, but I'll say that's one aspect that's happened because of my single parent family and our family, that he has had this opportunity to learn within himself as well and have some, purpose within the family home. So it's been great in a lot of ways. Yeah.
How important is it to have a strong support network to fall back on when it's required?
Yeah, absolutely. As my children have gotten older, I've got my daughter, and I do have people that have been really supportive, and I've had some great support at times, but everybody else has their own lives too. So it's hard to have that complete reliance on your support network as well. So even if you do have some support, it is quite difficult, I think, sometimes asking for that help, because part of being a single parent is you want people to see that you are coping and you're managing. So reaching out for help in itself is quite a hard thing to do. So you end up bearing quite a heavy burden yourself without asking for that support, because you feel like I'm always asking for, can you pick the children up because I have to do this, or can you help, babysit this one night or something? And you just think, you just don't want to ask somebody one time too many. Whereas I'm sure the support network doesn't actually feel or think that way. And they've said to me, they don't. But part of, I think, within this, we just don't want to ask for too much help and be a burden on other people.
Is it important for elected officials to know what services are available for single parents?
Absolutely. I mean, that's really important. And even knowing what services are there, because, I'd have that conversation in summer recess with your colleague, and it was quite eye-opening to see what services were there, because even with myself, I didn't know that personally, some of them. So I think it's important, particularly in elected positions as well, ensuring that information is out there, that people can, access it. I think it's extremely important.
Why is it important to have single parents and people with diverse lived experiences being represented in the Scottish Parliament?
Well, I believe that the Scottish Parliament should be a reflection of Scotland and of the people that live there and work there and raise families there here. So I think that's really important, that all voices are heard, because if we have people at the decision-making tables that, and I'm not saying that, perhaps sometimes decisions are made because they just don't take certain things into account because they're not aware. It's not that they're purposely excluding certain people, or there could be consequences to certain policies, etc., that they're maybe just not aware of. So it's important to have as many diverse people as possible making those decisions, so that lived experience can, be discussed, and that policy can be built on from that. Because it's the people with the lived experience that know better than anybody else.
This podcast is being recorded during Challenge Poverty Week. In order to alleviate poverty, Karen, what areas do you think the Scottish Government should focus on to try and make the lives of single-parent families easier?
I think firstly, being aware is really important of the lived experience of people living in poverty. And we all know that poverty isn't just something that people go in and stay in. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride. There's, relative poverty and, so many different factors that come into that I think we really need to address, because one month you could maybe be able to pay your bills and then the next month you can't. So looking at policy where there's maybe top-up benefits or extra support, and including ways that we can maybe buffer the effects on those people that are also dipping in and out of poverty. And as we know, most people who are claiming universal credit are actually working. It's the working poor as well, and it's single parents that are affected by that. So I think acknowledging that, that is the wider aspect of poverty and how it actually affects people and their lives is really important. I think the childcare, the rollout of the 1140 hours is fantastic. It's a huge help to a lot of single parents. And I think that's a massive, major step and major win, in that fight for equality, as well as lifting people out of poverty. I think it's also great for people's mental health. We know that, also single parents are disproportionately affected by mental health issues as well. So I think, that encompasses a whole different, genre of issues. We've got health, poverty inequalities, all these different aspects come into it. So it's looking really, I don't think there's just one channel or one line that we can go down. I think it's really important that when we look at policy across all areas, that we always have in the forefront of our mind when we're making decisions, how is this going to impact people, from certain demographics? I think that's going to be really important. And I think also this kind of ties into the previous question as well, what can we be doing, in Parliament, and being a parliamentarian and bringing that lived experience here. I think we also have to be an example here within the Parliament and within our own working practices, and how we can be, more flexible as employers. As an MSP, I'm an employer myself. And what I tried to do when I was employing people was make posts that were quite flexible. That was really important to me, particularly for people who had caring duties. And what I found was that when I advertised for the full-time position, set hours, I had a lot less people going for that position than I did for the 2 flexi part-time hours positions. And the breadth of talent and diversity that came forward for those positions benefited me as an employer, because the talent pool was just incredible. And I had so many applications for that. So that within itself showed me that we need to go more towards, a more flexi kind of way of working for people. So within Parliament as well, we need to think, how can we work? If we want people here from diverse backgrounds and carers here, unpaid carers and single parents, it needs to be a working environment and a place that welcomes people here and supports that, because we need to be making those decisions, and that knock-on effect, particularly spreads throughout Scotland if we're making the decisions here as well.
Okay. With the onset of the pandemic, flexible working patterns have become more common. How important is this for single parents and workers in general?
Flexible hours is great, because it's something I would have loved before, when I first became a single parent as well, because fitting times when you have the hardest time I find isn't when they're all at school and it's school drop off and pick up. It's if you have one at school and one at nursery. It's like, how do you fit in time to do anything else? It's so difficult, because you're just dropping them off at the morning, you're back at lunchtime to pick one up, and then you're back again to pick one up and your day's gone, really. But so some people may want to be working, but they're thinking, how can I fit it around, doing this care? So being able just to do an hour or two, whenever you can within a day, makes a huge difference to people. And if they do have support at a weekend, or perhaps maybe a co-parent, or somebody that takes a child, then you can maybe fit something in flexibly then, and not just be 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. So I think flexi working is a fantastic way forward for helping single parents.
Single parents raise the problems with accessing affordable and flexible childcare. How do you feel about this?
Well, that's something that we're looking at as well, because we've started off introducing the 1140 hours childcare, but what's been flagged and highlighted as extremely important is the wraparound childcare, because that's where a lot of issues are, because it's not just dropping children off and picking them up at school. So I think also it's a responsibility of employers to ensure they're often flexi positions or working around those hours, but also when it comes to providing childcare, that we make sure that it is flexible and wrap around for people who aren't working that 9 to 5 hours, that need to be there for their children. So I think it's a whole, culture of change that's needed, across the board, within the private sector as well as the public sector and government policy.
Thank you so much for your time today, Karen. There's so many single parents out there that will be really interested to hear about what you've said and all about your experiences.
Thank you for having me.